go to the child tax credit.
Okay.
Yeah, because he had a big part to play in that. You want to give the rundown?
Yes, he did. Sure. So we've talked many times on this show about the expanded child tax credit that was enacted during COVID as a way to relieve some families and give them more spending power. We just got an announcement that the child tax credit might be returning, not completely to that COVID era form, but it's going to be getting closer to it.
Hell yeah. Dude.
So the current child tax credit is $2,000, but only $1,600 of that is refundable at tax time. Now, refundable tax credits are still paid out in cash once a tax bill has been reduced to zero, whereas non-refundable tax credits can only be used to pay down tax debt. So raising that refundable number means you're putting more cash actually back into the pockets of people, even if their tax burden has been much lower. Under the proposed legislation, this was proposed by Democrat Ron Wyden out of Oregon in the Senate, and a Republican representative who I don't have on here. I'm not sure who it is, but I will say I'm excited that it was bipartisan.
Awesome that it's bipartisan. That's exactly what we need. And this is a great bipartisan issue. Marco Rubio was a big proponent of increasing the child tax credit in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. One of the only good parts of the Donald Trump tax credit that I give him full credit for was the expansion of the child tax credit, which was pushed by Marco Rubio.
Yes. And we're going to get more into the politics of that, but I want to go over the technical aspects first. So the proposed legislation increases the refundable child tax credit to $1,800 from that $1,600 for the 2023 tax returns. It raises it to $1,900 for 2024 and then $2,000 for 2025. And parents who earn more than $200,000 or $400,000 if filing jointly won't be eligible for the full 2023 child tax credit, but they may receive a partial credit. So there is a progressive aspect to the taxation there, which is nice.
Yeah.
The expansion will help 16 million children.
God, I love to see
fantastic. The total spend on this, on the whole package, is $78 billion. It's $33 billion that's going to the child tax credit, and then it's $33 billion more that goes to cutting taxes for small businesses, and increasing funding for the low-income housing tax credit.
I didn't see that in there.
Really?
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is also great. So low-income housing tax credit is an incentive for developers to provide cost-controlled housing for people with low incomes, which is fantastic.
We did a whole deep dive about the low-income housing tax credit.
Exactly. And then we have tax breaks for Taiwanese workers, which I assume was just slipped in there specifically for Taiwan Semiconductor, for TSMC, in making our chip factories. But I wonder if that's also foreseeing rising tensions with China in the Taiwan Strait, if more people want to come over in general, we are helping that happen.
Yeah, there's a whole double thing. We want to increase our industrial capacity, and then we also want to get as close relations as Taiwan as we can.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And so $78 billion, right? A lot of money. Where is this coming from? It's financed by reining in the employer retention tax credit, which was meant to help companies keep more employees during COVID, but now has turned into kind of this massive vehicle for fraud. And they're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. So now we get into the politics, right? Sherrod Brown, he's been a huge proponent of the child tax credit, of the expanded child tax credit for a long time. He said this is almost a legislative miracle, that 6 months ago there was no chance of the child tax credit. Now, this was introduced by a Democrat and a Republican, which to me means there's leadership on both sides as far as like it signaling to the rest of the party that they can get on board, and yet there are wings of both parties that aren't on board. So on the Democrat side, they are hesitant to support it because they say they want more.
Of course.
The American Rescue Plan boosted the child tax credit from $2,000 to $3,000 for children under the age of 6, and from $2,000 to $3,600 $2,000 to $3,000 for children over the age of 6, $2,000 to $3,600 for children under the age of 6. So they're saying this increase is not enough. So I initially had a note on here that would be dumb if it were true, but or because last week we made the point that Republicans who were insisting on doing nothing on immigration, on rejecting federal money to help hungry children, that they were arguing that you shouldn't do that. These reforms weren't doing enough, and so you shouldn't take them up. And it sounded kind of ridiculous to think, okay, well, not doing enough isn't an excuse for doing nothing, right? I do kind of understand this because once they get any kind of win on the child tax credit, the momentum is going to be gone.
And it's going to be really hard to then change that.
Exactly, to get any further on that. So I understand Democrats pushing for more, which is why I hope that this is a negotiation tactic from them to try to extract as much money for that child tax credit as they can. But at the end of the day, they should pass something on this.
No, I totally agree. I think this is a very important bill. Again, 16 million children that are going to be helped by this. I think that's incredibly amazing. There aren't many things that the United States government can do to directly help people. And this, I think, reduces the child poverty rate by 4 or 6%. Now, the expansion of the child tax credit of the American Rescue Plan reduced it by 36% to 42%.
Wow.
So that's how much that reduced the child poverty level in the United States. This only does it by 4%. I'm comfortable with that 4% as long as we don't give up the larger fight for more money in the child tax credit later on. One of the things that I loved about the American Rescue Plan child tax credit that isn't in this child tax credit is the ARP sent monthly checks out to families of $300. It was like it was operating like a child allowance with the veil of a tax credit. You were getting a $300 check in the mail every month. This is different. This is a one-time refundable flat check. It's a whole different operating procedure now, right? Because now you're making people wait for that money. Maybe they have to go into debt before they get the tax return. Then how much of this tax return just pays on interest of credit cards they had to use to. It's a whole different thing.
Sure.
I don't want that infrastructure or the idea of that infrastructure to be lost by this passing. This needs to be a starting point for further negotiation. But I mean, look, the American Jobs Act under Donald Trump changed the child tax credit. Now here we are changing it again. It's very possible this could be something that we see in the future.
True, but the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, if that's what you're talking about,
they expire eventually.
And also that came out in 2017.
Yeah,
it's now been 7 years.
Right.
And we needed COVID to happen to provide the impetus to even be talking about this.
I know.
Right? So I'm a little skeptical, and I do want them to go as far as they possibly can right now.
Yeah.
On the other side, Republicans, like far right House Republicans, might not pass it just because they don't want anything to be done in Congress. They don't want anything to be done.
They literally don't.
Yeah, and they don't want anything that could be seen as a victory for the Biden administration, which this totally could. Now, Biden has come out himself kind of on the side of these Senate Democrats or these House Democrats as well, who are saying we want more, or he's kind of subtly signaled that he wants more, pointing to the child tax credit that was in place during COVID. And I think their PR team specifically said we're really proud of the full child tax credit and the extent that it went to reduce child poverty. So Biden is trying to pull it up too, but I think that kind of subtle messaging does also show that he will sign whatever they're able to get when they do get it. He's just trying to pull it further to the left or pull more money into that tax cut.
And one thing that Joe Biden has to love about this is that it's totally paid for. There's no deficit spending going on.
Exactly.
There's no deficit spending. This is just reallocation of money. We're like, oh, this tax credit we're giving out is fraudulent. Let's give it to Main Street businesses and children.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So it's one of those, like,
an easy win.
We talk about cost benefit a lot. It's hard to see the costs here, right? They can just take that money out and give it to the families who need it most, and who are going to spend it in the economy most effectively.
Absolutely.
I just want to read one other quote that does talk about this point of Congress trying to get something done versus being obstructionist, and kind of where the view of the public might be on that right now. Michael Bennett, a Democrat from Colorado, said, "What you're seeing here in terms of politics is both parties, instead of failing and then pointing fingers at the other side and blaming the other side for failing, I think both parties have concluded that the American people would rather see progress, and they'd rather see the two parties working together. Whether there's a political lens on that, I don't know, but I suspect that it is a reaction to people knowing that folks at home are sick and tired of the chaos.
Good shit, Michael Bennett.
That's fantastic. Like, if we are actually in that place, this is exactly where our government needs to be. And I'm glad that enough messaging has been put out there, that it's been hammered home into people's heads, that we're not like that. Even though we're more polarized than ever, what we hate even more than compromise is nothing getting done.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think about, like, this has actually been a fairly good bipartisan Congress.
Totally.
It actually has. But, well, not this one, but like the previous one. You know what I mean? Like not since Republicans took the House.
Yes.
But like before that, like we got the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed in the Senate with majority with Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. The CHIPS bill passed with Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Now we have a child tax credit tax change looking like it could pass in the Senate with Republican and Democrat support.
Yeah.